welcome to the old shop. I am sitting in front of the wood pile because I had this lovely load of ash delivered yesterday. It's really dry, and sorry to get excited about a load of firewood, but the stove is such an important aspect of the old shop. It is just such a heart of the cottage that it's really important to have good firewood. And though I've been collecting some kindling, I'm sure I'll collect some more yet. The actual wood, the actual main firewood, I have been having to actually buy loads of since I've been here, and there is still quite a bit in the woodshed, but it's lovely to feel we're well supplied over the winter. And so yeah, so I thought it would be a good backdrop for saying hello to you. So today it's actually Old All Hallows Eve, because it's 13 days after Halloween today. And so in the Julian calendar, as I always harp on about, this is the conditions today and seasonally is how it would have been for All Hallows Eve before 1752. So I'm always quite interested to see how it feels at that point, 13 days later, and that is today. So I thought it was a good day to actually post this video. So hopefully I'll get it finished, and I'm sure I will. And get it out there for you. So I hope you'll enjoy it. It's just a bit of this and a bit of that. Just looking at the season here in northeast Norfolk. Yeah, little bits of what's been going on here and around and about, all in Norfolk this time, and a little walk down the lane as well to Crowwood. And just bits and pieces. Learnt a new tune on the recorder. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll enjoy it. I should be keeping up my Hallowtide decorations here until after Old Hallowtide, so that will be after Old All Souls on the 15th, and then all of this will come down and I suppose we start thinking about the solstice. Today is Martinmas, the 11th of November, or at least in today's calendar. I love the word Martinmas and I love this time of year and everything that it represents, and it's a very resonant time of year in lots and lots of ways, and obviously the date 11th of the 11th is a very resonant date, being Remembrance Day, and I've also recently discovered it's thought of as a portal as well, and that's very interesting to me, the idea of a portal, as I'll tell you as we go along. But I just paused here before we get going, really, just to kind of show you how the green is disappearing. Everything is turning bleached and bronzed and just losing that greenness of the summer. Or so you might think, and what we're going to do today is exploring the green that's actually showing itself more. One of the most obvious ways that the green has gone, apart from the bracken all turning, and there's lots of bracken here at the heath, is the leaves disappearing, of course, from the trees. And quite a few of the trees do still have leaves, but the birches have lost nearly all of them, and you can see all the witches' brooms, which I love. They're so evocative, aren't they? But they are another sign of the autumn and winter, and another sign really that the green that in the spring was so, we were watching it all arriving, and now it's just melting away. We've just arrived in Wood, just coming into the entrance now, and I think probably last year, I don't think it was the year before, for my YouTube channel, on Martinmas, I remember walking around Wood and recounting not only looking at the autumn colours and everything, but also recounting the story of the green children, who it's a very well-known folk tale, and it comes from Woolpit in Suffolk, which is the neighbouring county to Norfolk, where I live. So it's an East Anglian folk tale, but it's really well known about these two children who are green and who came from, or they said that they'd come from a place called St Martin's Land, which was through a portal. They came up through a portal. So I thought this is really interesting that today's Martinmas, they came from St Martin's Land, and and today's said to be a portal, I'm thinking, into other realms or from other realms. And so what I thought I was going to do today, rather than going through the story again, which I think again you'll find in lots of places online, I thought I'd like to go slightly sideways from the obvious, and I thought what we'll do, rather than looking at the autumn colours and how everything's fading, we're going to look at how things are actually becoming more green. The green's becoming more prevalent in certain areas and certain types of green, just to kind of chime with the idea of the green children, where everything in St Martin's Land was green. I know it all sounds a bit convoluted, but this was my kind of slightly strange way of thinking about what to do today and what we could explore together, because I don't know yet what I'm going to find either. I'm not coming here knowing exactly what I'm going to show you. I'm just going to walk through Wood and walk to the alder car and see where the green is coming through. So to start with, here we actually have some new green, and I've noticed this before, the way the honeysuckle, it has very dry looking vines, and the old leaves and berries fall off, but the new leaves come even now in November. In fact, I started noticing them when it was still October. We've got the new growth for next year. Of course, however the colours in a woodland like this start to turn a kind of browny, I love these colours, but very subtle shades, you'll always have some bright green, because we've always got the ivy growing up the trees. As you can see here, the deep green of the ivy up this tree, and in this wood in particular, but I know in a lot of woods there's a lot of holly, and the holly and the ivy are of course coming into their own now, and we're really noticing them more and more. On this honeysuckle, the leaves are even more advanced, so you can see them really clearly, how they're very fresh and green and new.
And we've got the holly behind as well, and the berries of course are already here, not that they're green, but it's another sign of the season. And this tree, well, it's the bottom part of the tree trunk here, and as it goes into the roots, this is really mossy, and this is the kind of thing I thought we might see, and we are seeing, that against all the fallen leaves, this green is really standing out. I always think this is really magical, this particular one, how it looks like fingers or toes reaching into the earth. And another thing you notice more at this time of year, particularly, is you can see this oak trunk, and this side is oak bark coloured, but as you go round you see how it's gone mossy on this side, so you really do notice really strongly where the north and the south sides are, because this green is really standing out so strongly. In a wood like this, where the fallen trees tend to be left where they are, just to rot down, of course as they get damper and more rotten, you do get a lot more moss forming. It's a very dry part of the country in Norfolk, so we don't have a very high rainfall, which means it's not a very mossy and lush place really, so you do notice the moss really quite a lot when it's here anyway, but then at this time of year again it's really starting to stand out a lot when the sun shines on it. It's a very, very vivid colour. I think if you had everything this colour, it might seem a bit much for somebody who loves subtle tones like I do, but it's definitely a green for St Martin's Day, that's for certain. And it's all the more because it's slightly rare here. I mean, obviously not all of Norfolk, but just in a woodland like this where we don't get much rainfall, it tends to be quite dry under the trees, and so you don't get great growths of moss and lichen like you do in some more western and southern counties. You just get a lot more rainfall. So we're just going through another green tunnel, which is the Holly Tunnel. And what you're really noticing is green, which is quite ironic at this time of year when everything seems to be turning brown. More green on this mossy birch trunk where it's bent right over, and I imagine it's collected more water on there, or perhaps it is starting to rot, because some of these trees in the wood, they are definitely getting quite old for birches, and that's why as soon as there's anything like a storm or a little bit of inclement weather, you do tend to, or certainly when it gets windy, always a few of them seem to come down. As well as this mossy tree, well, it's a fallen birch here. I don't know if you can see it, how it's lying down there, and this is its root ball, which has been upended like this for many years, but it's growing moss on it itself now. But as well as that, you've got a bramble growing out of it, and because we haven't had any cold weather yet, really cold weather, we haven't really had any frosts, not proper frosts at all yet, so everything that might have died back, like the brambles and indeed nettles, we might see some nettles, young nettles further around, I don't know, in the woods here, but it's actually growing new leaves. It's actually really, really very green still, and new buds are still coming out. I think that will change very soon, but at the moment we've even got vivid green from the brambles. Down at the bottom of the wood here, there's a lot of holly, and so of course we've got it's a very green scene, and all these holly berries as well, which look so festive, but actually by Christmas time they probably won't be here, because they do get eaten by the birds. As soon as we get cold weather, I think that they'll probably start to get depleted. Surprisingly green scene, really. The bracken you can't get fresh growth on the bracken now. It's doing its melting into the earth thing, but because of these, as I was saying just a few moments ago about the brambles still being green, and when you look across, yes, the trees are losing their leaves now, and lots of them have lost their leaves, but it's surprisingly green for November. Lots more mossy green in the forks of trees like this, where the water runs down and collects, and even the actual bark has got a green hue about it. Again, you notice it a lot more. It probably has it at other times of year, but as this time of year draws on, the winter draws on, you really notice the different tones in the bark far more than you do in the summertime, which is one of the things I love about the season. And the same goes for the I don't know whether it's a kind of algae or a kind of moss, I don't really know, on this, another one of these fallen trees. If I lift up the camera you can probably see its trunk, which is also very green, snaking away there over the ground, and then this is its root ball. Again, that's been here as long as I've lived here, and I would imagine a lot longer. It's always quite surprising how shallow these roots are, really, considering the actual size of the tree, which this was an oak tree. In fact, it's still a lot, well, I guess part of it is actually still in the earth here, and it is still struggling to put out some leaves, amazingly enough. These earthen banks beside the little stream or ditch, I like to call it a stream, though at the moment it's not looking particularly stream-like. We've had so little rainfall that it's almost as dry as it would be in the summer, and it hasn't actually acquired a greenish tinge yet, but I think it probably will, what's left of the water there. The bank is well, you can see the path, which I'm walking on now, because that gets worn when people do walk along here. Then that isn't green, but each side, well, certainly on this side, the moss is gathering. Aren't we lucky with the sunshine today? It's a little bit chilly on the fingers, but it is really a beautiful day, and we're really seeing the sparkle. There's more surprisingly green areas here. Again, it's because we haven't had frost yet that some of the plants are actually coming back again, like this one. You can see how it is all really very fresh. And as I was saying earlier about the brambles, there's a lot of fresh growth on the brambles, as well as these vines which are finished like this, which are doing what I'd expect to see at this time of year. So this idea of a portal between the worlds is very interesting to me anyway, but I often feel that this wood itself is a bit of a portal, not just on the 11th of the 11th, but at all times. It's a real, especially when it's sunny like this, there's a real sense of those dancing beams. I don't know whether you can sense it yourself. And the fact that anything could happen, any being could step out from between these trunks at any moment that you were not expecting and would never have imagined. Some of the trees are bent over into fantastical shapes, and they really do have their own aura and character about them, like this one here, which is bent right down almost to the water's edge there. We've come to the other edge of the wood. I've walked right along the bottom of the wood, and there's a huge swathe of brambles here just spreading across the ground, and there were some reeds as well, and a little bit of bracken, and it's just so surprisingly green, isn't it? I'm not claiming we've stumbled into St Martin's land, but it almost feels as if we have. I don't know whether this bracken under the trees is a different kind from the heathy bracken at the edges, which is completely brown now. So we are seeing a surprising sea of green, with all the coloured leaves just resting on the top, like these birch leaves that here that always do turn really early in the season anyway. And then again this sea of brambles, which they grow very low here, they form a real understory in the woods here. They don't really have blackberries on. Well, not that I've noticed, not these kind of spreading ones that are just on the ground here. In the summer I always think of the pine trunks here as quite a reddish colour, but as soon as it comes to this time of year, it's actually, again, there's the greens in it that start to come out more. So I'm just going to take us down to the alder car, and we'll just have a really quick look there and see if there's any green to be seen. Well, here's some interesting green. Not only are the hazel leaves, a lot of them are still green, which is very unusual at this time of year, but what isn't unusual but is still noticeably green is the fact that the new catkins are already here, and they're green catkins. Of course, when the spring comes, or earliest spring, there'll be the long dangling lamb's tails, which are like a pale yellowy colour full of pollen. But the green catkins come at this time of year, and when the leaves all fall off, of course the catkins will still be here. Well, I did say we'd just quickly go and have a quick look at the alder. It's actually quite difficult to get in there still because things haven't died down, and the nettles, as I suspected, are still looking rather green and fresh, and the brambles are arching across, trying to keep us out. The reeds are starting to turn brown. You can see that it won't be that long before they collapse. They were really standing tall and green and proud until very recently. So I'm going to just trying to see if I can get in, just to see if we can see the actual surface of the. Well, I don't think there is any water in the car. It's been so dry, but we'll just see how it's looking anyway before I head off home and get this ready to show you. I'm pushing my way through the reeds, just like the deer do. You can see the deer tracks down here, or at least I can see where they've been. I can't necessarily see their actual hoof prints right here, but this muddy path is definitely their way through. Here we come. And coming out where in the winter and in the spring it was completely full of water. And I don't know whether you remember, but if you look back over the archives, there was a time when all the water was frozen here and it was an ice palace. It was just quite incredible to see. And so if you did see that, you'll really see the contrast now, because you could walk across here. I've not really seen it like this before when it's completely dry. I think in the middle here it is muddy, but it's only muddy. I can see where animals, I assume the red deer, have run across here. But when everything around is gone so stripped back, then the green becomes even more noticeable. It's very beautiful like this. I think the alder is actually very beautiful in all seasons. It always has something magical to show. So I've decided that just because I can, and most of the time I can't, I'm actually going to walk across what would be the water, walking on water, to this alder tree, which is usually an island. Now, I don't think I've ever been across to this tree before, because it is on a little island of its own, which is made by its roots, which if I step back, I'll be able to show you. I stepped back quite a long way, I think, to show you that. But yeah, it stands on this, you can see how it stands raised up on its, maybe you can't see it that well. Maybe if I crouch down you can see more how it's raised up above the level of everything else. And you certainly notice the green when I show you it from this level. And in fact the light coming through, if you look at the light coming through, even the light looks green. And it's said that the light in St Martin's Land, where the green children came from, the light was green and everything was green and their skin was green. You can imagine them stepping through the trees here. And I think that's a very good thought to end on. And I wonder what will happen when I turn off the camera, what will happen next. Well, I've just spotted a pair of goldfinches flitting around in the tiny forest between the trees, which, as you know, pleases me a lot to think about it being a proper forest, but that's not what I'm going to show you today. What I wanted to show you just very quickly was the hare that I made in the Halloween workshop that you might have seen at the beginning in the introduction, because I brought him or her back here. And I'm not quite sure yet where they're going to reside, but I brought back with me some willow as well to try to fatten him or her up a bit, because it took a whole day, but it's surprising how much work goes into something like this. Lots of different bits that had to be laced together with bits of willow. I was very pleased though to actually have achieved something that looks vaguely like a hare, with the long back legs here and front legs here, with even little claws, which were one of the last things that I did before we finished for the day. I think by the time we finished I really had enough of weaving. It really was a very hard work, Well, it was not hard work to start with, but by the time you've done it for several hours, yeah, it was definitely time to stop. So that's why a lot of us brought back some willow just to weave in again. And you can see how I haven't done it. Once you get home, you know, it's different again, and you're sort of happy with it how it is. I like seeing that as an outdoor hare at the moment, a fallen leaf has fallen on their back. Even got a tail here. I don't know if you can see the tail there. And how mine has been made, some of them were and some of them weren't, is there's a spike here. It's built on a spike to put it into the ground. Now, I'm not sure whether that's really what I want, because if you keep them outdoors, you have to spray them, I believe, possibly 3 times a year with a mixture of linseed oil and terps, which I'm not sure that I really want to have to do. As an indoor hare, I'd need to try and hammer back this spike so that they could stand up, which several people did while they were in the workshop, but I didn't think ahead like that. So we'll see if it's possible now that he's made. If it's not, then, you know, I'm kind of quite at ease with things being having a lifespan and gently fading away when the time is right. So that might be what happens, or I might go down the terps and linseed oil route. Let's see. But I thought you might like to see them. It really was a lovely day making them. I really enjoyed that. It was something that I hadn't tried before. I've woven willow wreaths, which is easy enough to do, but something with an actual shape like this, with the different parts that have to be woven together, is not something I've done. There's quite a lot of willow in the garden here. I planted quite a few willow saplings. In fact, there's a blackbird just landed in a willow just now, and I don't know if you can see if I lift up. No, as soon as I lifted up the camera, of course, he flew off. But anyway, there's willows there and willows elsewhere in the garden with different colour stems, and some of them I know are better than others for weaving. But it's nice that they're here, and maybe I don't think I'll make something like a hare so readily, but it's nice to think you could perhaps weave something like a star with, you know, in this kind of way. I can imagine doing that. So it was always, any skill like that is a good thing, I think, to learn. And I just thought I would show you the results while he's still looking perky.